Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk Business. I am your host, Rick Jenkins. Appreciate you being with us. You know, more and more companies today find themselves in need of IT support. It seems like every time you turn around, someone is getting hacked. All this cyber security stuff, that's a big deal, right? And technology advancements are so fast and so furious that it is hard to keep up. Lots of companies don't have the availability or the ability to hire someone in IT, kind of solely dedicated to IT. However, there are other options out there. And this next guy that I got talking to me, he can discuss those types of options and let you know if you are a new company, if you're a startup, or if you are early in your journey as a new business, what options might be available to you from an IT perspective. And this guy is Reed Wilson. He is the CEO of PTG, or Palmetto Technology Group. Welcome, man.
Thanks, Rick. Glad to be here.
It is good to have you here. Thanks for joining us. You know, before we get into PTG, we'll talk about that in a second, but let's talk about you for a minute. You have been doing, let's see, you founded PTG in 2007, is
That's
that
correct.
right? But
That's right.
before you did that, you were a sales dude, first and foremost.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
What were you doing at that point?
Yeah, I graduated from school at Citadel in '99 and met John Sterling here in Greenville. He tricked me out of pursuing other interests and coming to work for him in '99. And so I was with the sales team there at DataStream up until our exit. Infor bought DataStream in 2006. I stayed for about a year after the exit and then started PTG in 2007.
So at that point, though, you were selling software products.
Correct. That's right.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. So 2007 comes along and you decide, you know, man, I want to do this on my own. I want to start my own gig. I want to branch out. And so you do it. And then what happens a year later? Something called 2008.
Yeah, that was a rough time for sure. So my background was primarily in enterprise sales. We sold to folks like PepsiCo, Frito-Lay, Dell, American Airlines, really big orgs. And two gentlemen that I had known at DataStream for a really long time, Eric Pohl and Chris Van Zant, we started PTG really focused on the enterprise market,
Right.
and using a technology called virtualization. I won't go into the nerdy details of that. But in 2008, obviously the world shifted and enterprises were spending less and less corporate dollars on IT and specifically data center modernization. So we had to pivot pretty quickly out of the enterprise market and into the SMB world. I always tell people, when you're starting a business, very seldom is the business that you started the business that you end up with, and that's certainly true for us too. So we made that pivot in 2008 to focus on the SMB space, specifically on the Microsoft world. And we've had a pretty good run since then.
Yeah, you sure have. Before we get into the types of things that you offer, though, let's stick with this for a second.
Sure.
You guys, your corporate office, your main office is in Greenville.
That's right.
Right? But you all are expanding.
We are.
Tell me about it. What's that look like for you?
Yeah, we've got offices in 5 or 6 different cities now. Really, primarily on the East Coast. That's really started in the past, call it year. We're just seeing that as more and more folks go to remote work, we can support their end users and their technology really wherever they happen to be.
Right. So that was one good thing, I suppose, if you want to look at it that way, that came out of COVID is remote work.
That's right.
That might help
For sure.
An industry like you guys. Let's talk about your services. Now, one thing, and we talked about this just briefly before we came back on the air, and that is that fractionalized services seem to be becoming more and more popular today. Right? As a matter of fact, just in the last episode, we had a guy, Bill Simmons, with us who works for Thrive Industries, and he provides fractional CEO assistance to companies.
Yeah.
But you can get a fractional anything, but you all, for putting it simply, can offer fractional assistance within the IT industry, correct?
Yeah, I mean, so hiring good quality IT folks is really difficult these days, and if you hire a good one, they update LinkedIn, and about 32 seconds later, every recruiter in the world is calling on them, right?
Yeah.
And so our niche really is smaller organizations that either don't want to have in-house IT, don't really need full-time IT, and they just need help. Really, we do that on a recurring basis, and I like to say we take care of it from soup to nuts. Simple things like, hey, I can't print today, to hey, I need to move my entire IT infrastructure to the cloud. Our team can handle those kind of requests for our customers.
What are the types of companies we're talking about here on the large end? Where you're covering a whole lot of things, as you said.
Yeah.
I mean, give me an idea of who might be a client.
Yeah, I mean, so I would say our average customer is probably in the 50 to 80 employee range. We've got them down, as small as 5, and I think our largest customer is up to about 2,200 employees today. So by and large, we're talking about folks that are in the professional services industry, legal, healthcare, manufacturing, financial services. We're seeing a lot of those types of businesses that, as more and more of their technology has been moving to the cloud, everybody thinks that the cloud should be easier and cheaper, and really all that means is your firewall is now, everything used to be really easy to secure because it was inside your office. Now we've got data everywhere. Right. And so, one of the promises of the cloud has been it will be cheaper and faster, and unfortunately that's not really true. It's certainly faster, but over the long haul, what we find is securing that infrastructure is pretty doggone difficult. And if you do like a 3 or 5 year total cost of ownership, it's almost a wash from, hey, I'm going to have my servers in my closet to I'm going to put my servers in the cloud.
You mentioned manufacturing industry. Do a lot of work there?
We do, yeah.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? I would think that the manufacturing industry would require some type, and of course it's just my ignorance talking here, but I would think that it would require some type of specific knowledge about all of this crazy technology that, tied to Industry 4.0 within there. But you all can provide that.
Yeah, so I think it's important to remember that we're a conduit, right? And so most of our manufacturing customers have specialized relationships with the folks that make that manufacturing equipment, but they rely on our team to serve as the liaison between the folks inside the organization and the end provider of that software. And even in those scenarios, a lot of manufacturers still have a lot of back office, right? And so they're using things like email, file share, printing, just general cloud. So I want to be clear, we're not going in and supporting a customer's PLC or our machine apps, but we would work with those vendors on behalf of the customer if there's a big upgrade that might be coming up.
Startups, do you do a lot of work with startups or people who are in the beginning stages of that journey?
I'd say we do a lot of, I'll call it pro bono consulting for folks that are in kind of that really small stage, because typically at that stage, your organization isn't very large, and as a result it hasn't gotten overly complex. I love those kind of engagements early on when we can just kind of coach a potential customer, because we know they're going to grow, and that becomes a larger customer for us down the track.
I would guess that with folks that are in that situation, small businesses and startups, that there are things that they can do right up front that's going to save them money in the long run, and they don't know what they don't know.
That's right.
Right? What's that look like?
Yeah, so I would say a couple common mistakes that we see folks in the startup mode make is, number one, they kind of cheap out on the hardware side, and I don't mean that in a negative fashion necessarily, but they'll go pick up a machine from Best Buy, or they're ordered off Amazon.com, and the machine that you use at home is really made to use an hour or two a day, and these devices that are inside a customer environment typically are going to take a little bit more of a beating. So we encourage customers, go with a business class style device early in the startup days. And then I think also the two other areas that we see folks don't think about until it's too late is security. That is just absolutely critical, and it's not just like the hackers and that kind of stuff. Certainly that's scary stuff, but also just understanding who your vendors are. And so we got pulled into a situation a couple years back where a law firm had gone with a smaller kind of startup infrastructure provider for their case management system. They didn't really do their due diligence on the back end. That case management system actually got hit with ransomware, and the customer basically was without their case management system for a long period of time. And so really do your due diligence on who your vendors are when you're in those early startup phases. And then the third thing I think that's really critical is just understanding, where are we keeping data? We go into customer environments all the time, specifically in the startup world, and they've got data stored in Gmail, in their Yahoo, in Dropbox, in Google Drive, and that works when you're smaller. But as your organization grows, you now have data that goes everywhere, and when it comes time to actually control that, that can be pretty difficult if you don't have a handle around that right out of the gate.
Rena, I'm going to get you out of here on this. There's a lot of companies out there. There are a lot of CEOs that are sitting, that are listening or watching. Give some advice to those folks. What can they do right now, within a small organization format that could save them some money that they're not even aware that they might be able to save?
Yeah, I'd say there's three.
Yep.
First and foremost, if you have any budget at all to spend. We had this customer ask this question. I've got $10 to spend on security. What should I spend it on? And my advice was spend all $10 first and foremost on awareness for your end users, because that's how most of these bad guys get in. They just trick the end user into doing something that they shouldn't do. The second piece of advice I would give you right out of the gate is really understand what's included in the certain types of licenses. Microsoft 365, for example, is a very wide product that can do a whole bunch of different things, and we see customers oftentimes that are overpaying for multiple subscriptions without maximizing that license that they might have. The third piece is, I'm just amazed. I mean, even organizations in the 30, 40, $50 million range, they don't have an annual IT budget. And so that's an area that we can certainly help them with, but I would say really understanding what your IT costs are right out of the gate and including that in your budget are really, really critical.
Reed, that was really good stuff, man. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, Rick.
You are welcome. Folks, that is Reed Wilson, CEO of PTG, or Palmetto Technology Group. And don't go anywhere. We will be back with another guest in just about 30 seconds. See you soon.